But Byron, thank you so much for coming on.
Dude, it's a pleasure. It's an honor.
Absolute honor to have you here.
Thank
I think I'm most excited about this. Like when John was like, listen, I got a guy for you. It's going to be awesome. And I was like, all right, cool. And he's like, he's done a lot of tours, man. He's, and I'm like, good. Like, I want to know what it's like. And then we talked for a little bit about your backstory and like where you're going and all these things. I'm like, fuck, man, we think the same way. And so first I just want to say thank you for everything you've done for us and for the country, because it's amazing. I get to drink this ridiculous Starbucks coffee right now because it's so funny. From like December to September, I don't drink Starbucks. I'll drink like $5 worth, and then pumpkin spice season here, and I just get my fucking little white bitch on. I'm just like, what's up?
Dude, I'm the same way. My wife's got the candles. I'm like all eating it up. I'm like, let's fucking go.
Dude, they got organic pumpkin spice cinnamon rolls at Whole Foods now. I'm like, Sloan, we can have cinnamon rolls for breakfast every day.
It's like everyone's bouncing off the walls. But they're organic.
It's organic sugar. So what if it's 70 grams? You can digest it better. Okay. Good. But so anyways, this is going to be awesome. I don't have a direction for this one. I just want to talk about everything, like just where we would all the things that have happened in your life, and we're just going to jam for a couple hours and just see how it goes.
Oh man, this is definitely going to be a part 2 to this one.
Yeah, we're going to definitely have a part 2. We're going to definitely have a part 2. So let's start with getting married, deciding to have children, and and let's start with that story and going through there. First, let's. How many children do you have? Let's start
I have
with that.
A total of 4 kids.
4 kids. Okay.
3 daughters, 1 boy.
Okay, awesome. And different mothers?
Yes.
Okay.
So my 2 daughters are with my first wife. My second wife was with my son.
Okay.
And my third wife, my final wife, because if this fails, me and you are moving in together.
Yeah, that's it. I'll take it. I'll take you in.
That's it. I'll be bottom. Is with my 4th kid, which is Sophia. She's 3.
It's awesome.
So essentially I have 2 teenagers, an 8-year-old and a 3-year-old.
This is part of, again, why I wanted to start this podcast, because I feel like this story is so much more relatable to human beings than I use Gary Vaynerchuk all the time and I pick on him than him. Right? Because a multimillionaire who's got whatever figured out and has got 17 nannies and whatever. And maybe he doesn't have all that, but you see what I mean? Right. This story is so much more relevant to, I think, the regular everyday person, and hearing how you went from one marriage where, again, I'm divorced, and I'll be the first person to look you in the eyes and tell you, I probably would have divorced me too. You know,
dude, like that's the biggest thing with me is that, and we've already talked about this a little bit, but like for the audiences is like total ownership, just unabated. Like you got to own you. I don't give a flying shit what she did to you, whether she cheated on you, abused you, mentally did whatever. You got to take ownership of your personal self.
100%.
And then let the other shit go. Because if you can't, now you're going to allow these things to fester inside of you, which now you're a broken person. And then you're going to get into another relationship where you're broken and expect, and more than likely that person isn't completely healthy either.
Sure.
And 2 unhealthy people now trying to make something work when you haven't worked on yourself.
Right. It's like you're in the same house and you went into a different room looking for a new home.
Yeah. I mean, and
you went from the kitchen to the living room and you're like, why isn't it any different over here?
Yeah. And then, my first marriage, I was leaving Ranger Regiment, was going on to the base exhibition parachute team. And, I thought I was some big hot swinging hot stuff.
You are a big hot swinging hot stuff. I'm not gonna lie.
And I was just a complete freaking piece of shit.
Yeah.
I cheated on her. I lied about it. I lied to my family. I lied to everybody about my entire secret life that I was living, sneaking off to Auburn. Oh, I got to work staff duty tonight. I'm going over to fucking Auburn and being a complete piece of shit.
Yeah.
And then, but what I didn't realize is, here's this woman who's at home thinking her husband's at fucking work being a complete fucking piece of shit.
Yeah.
Right. And the thing is, and I get asked this all the time, is like, oh, your kids are going to hear this. You're like, I hope they do.
Yeah.
Because am I a success now? Yeah, I am. Am I well off now? Yeah, kind of. But I wasn't always this way.
Right.
And I also paid those dues for the, if you will, karma. Not that I believe in that, but like, you know, the consequences to my actions is what I believe.
Yep.
Caught up with me.
Yep.
And it took me a really long time to recover from that. And, you know, what happens is that people go off and do ass hattery, and they turn around and then expect when they go, oh, I'm sorry, guys, that all of a sudden we're all just okie dokie and everything should be forgiven. No, there's still consequences. You go to prison for being a bad person and doing bad things. Whether you get convicted or not, there's still consequences from that shitty behavior.
Correct.
That could last for a lifetime. So now,
well, that's one of the things I don't think we teach our children. A lot of people don't teach their children are consequences to your actions anymore.
They don't.
No,
it's not. It's almost non-existent.
No, and I'm a big one on natural consequences, because almost always it can come down to a natural consequence. And so I have these things with Sloan all the time, where it's like, hey, this is X, Y, and Z. We just use food. This is what we have in the fridge. Well, I don't want those things. Okay, but that's what we have at the home.
Right.
You can have those things, right? Like, you know, I think someone told me the other day or sent me a thing where it was like, you know, people in poverty don't have picky eaters.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah, there you go.
Facts.
You know, and so then Sloan was hungry like 2 hours later when we left the house to go do what we needed to do, but we weren't stopping anywhere. And I told her, baby girl, you had the option. All the food in the home. You didn't want any of it. Now you got to wait till dinner time.
Yeah.
It's just what it is.
Right.
You know,
and that's a very simplistic way, a very natural way to create those, like, ooh, maybe this might be an important time for me to get ready for school, so I'm not late.
Yep.
You know, and they naturally start to understand that. And for me, you know, and I had a great raising. Like, my life growing up, you would not expect this type of behavior from me at all. Like very Christian home. Mom and dad, like, got no problems with them. They were phenomenal. Like, my dad is still to this day one of my best friends.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I was a huge disappointment there for a minute because I made some really poor decisions, and then I had the consequences to bear. But that doesn't end there, because now I have to look at two little girls in their face and be like, and they have asked me that. That is a conversation that has happened. And guess if
That's
people
beautiful though.
Yeah, it is, but it's
you can have that though.
But I don't talk to them now. I have zero relationship with my daughters because of the pain and suffering it's created them. Now, do I think they'll come around in time? I 100% believe that will happen.
Sure.
But I have watched, I have watched the pain that woman, I have created in that woman's life, and the anger and the bitterness. And she'll sit there and look you dead in your face and be like, I forgive him, or I forgive him. But you know she hasn't, because she's not able to come to terms with the things that have happened.
Right.
And it is 100% my fault. Now, I don't care what she did to me. It doesn't make any freaking difference.
Right.
Because the only thing in this life that we have control over is our actions and how we control our emotions, which I had no ability to do back then.
Neither did I.
So, you know, and then I jumped out of the pot and directly into the fire with another woman.
So back up before we do that. I want to talk about, so do you think, so at that time, had you done any tours? Because I guess the link I'm trying to make here is, do you believe that potentially you were so off the rails because you were just seeking some type of outlet for this intense life that you had to live?
100%.
Yeah.
I had done the majority of my deployments. I was about halfway. I think I was at my halfway point in deployments. So after I got out of contracting and everything, it was like 14 deployments total. That's including my outside the military time. You know, and I think I had one more deployment, which was to Iraq at that point in time before I met my second wife. And it was 100%. And I was dealing with a lot of things that I was struggling with in the military, like, being forced to mature really fast, and really fighting it. Got to go to a lot of really cool elite schools at a very young age with the maturity level that wasn't necessarily there, which I kind of attribute a little bit to being homeschooled, because I was a homeschooled kid.
Okay.
So a little bit of that is I did miss out on a few things as being home. I wouldn't say totally missed out on it, but there were some maturity things there that weren't there that not, I guess to say normal kids would have.
Yeah.
Not that homeschooling is a wrong decision for anybody if you're choosing to do that, because this day and age, I think it's a great option, especially now.
It was homeschool or the school my daughter's in for us. That was the options. And it's interesting because you'll meet, and I had a guy who homeschools he has 7 kids. He was on here, homeschools them. He's like, they're awesome. He goes, but like anything, I met a lot of fucking weird homeschool kids.
Right.
And I met a lot of really fucking weird kids in school.
Yeah.
I mean, there's kids in school now that are pretending they're cats and pissing in litter boxes. So you pick which weird you want.
Right. I feel like I became a fairly productive member of society.
You weren't pissing in litter boxes.
I wasn't pissing in litter boxes
or
identifying as a lampshade. But I definitely 100% believe my behavior was that of someone trying to find, and a lot of it was hiding. For me, it was trying to hide hurt, pain, extreme insecurities. There were things that I was struggling with as a man that, and I don't even know what they were at this point, so I just know I was struggling.
I can feel, because I feel the exact same thing. Like that, when I talk about like why I would party the way I did and stuff, I would talk about, it was like I was partying to feel something, but hiding the other feelings.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like it's this weird like conundrum, and it's like I don't even know what I was looking for.
Right.
It was just something.
Right.
Yeah. So I get it. I also didn't have like half the traumas that you did doing all those tours, but still, it's again, I guess part of bringing this up is like everything's relevant to where you're at in life.
Yeah, and what's crazy is that I was suppressing a lot of those memories, and I think a lot of it was suppression. A lot of it was, and it's crazy because like we were just talking right prior to me going on an ayahuasca retreat.
Yeah.
So this has, a far different tone than I was anticipating, because my life has changed astronomically.
Let's talk about the whole thing. Let's talk about it. Talk about the ayahuasca. Let's get. We can dive into it.
Oh yeah. Well, it's crazy because I'll dive into my second marriage so that you have context. Okay. Because I went in. I jumped out of the pot right into the fire. Not that she was the fire at all. It was, she was somewhat freshly divorced. I was not even through with my divorce. She stayed with me for not months, but years as I fought through this custody battle and divorce. And then finally we get through it all, almost 5 years into our dating and engagement. And I'm finally finalized, and we just pulled the trigger to get married. And then shortly thereafter, which was intentional, my son was intentional, my 2 daughters, they just happened to happen right after we had gotten married. And there were red flags left and right. I was love is blind. Yeah, on the first marriage.
Yeah, there always is.
The second marriage, some said there was. I didn't. There wasn't. The issues that we ended up having where she couldn't handle my first ex-wife, and I allowed the toxicity from my first marriage to enter my second marriage, and then we started having severe financial issues and I again still did not have control of my emotions, which was an extreme weakness for me, and so all that bled over, and then she made her decisions, I made my decisions, and then we ended up going our separate ways. We're actually good friends. We have a great relationship. She has been remarried to a phenomenal freaking man. She has a daughter, and our families co-parent just beautifully.
Beautiful.
It has our ups and downs. We've had our arguments and our fights.
Of course. I mean, I say the same thing. Christy and I have an I don't know if I could ask for a better co-parenting relationship than the one I have with my ex-wife. We still every now and then have a little up and down, but we get through it in an hour. Yeah. Like we're good. Like we know Sloan matters most.
Right.
And it's interesting because like it's interesting what you can put aside when you really care so much about the children.
Right. Yeah, and that's just it. And it's really funny because like we were talking before, it's like I want my kids to see stuff like this. I want them to go, my dad literally became homeless twice on 2 separate occasions where my dad was completely had nothing, living out of his car, living under a bridge, had not a dollar to his name. He then made lots of money, lost it again because he made a poor decision. But he fixed that. And then now here he is and built an empire that they now can benefit from, but they're going to work just as hard as I did. You know, they're not going to be given nothing with that great grammar. That's that college education. That's that homeschool college education right there. But you know, and that's the thing is I want, because perseverance is the most important, one of the most important attributes we have to train our children in, is that, and people going, well, you don't want them to see your failures, or you don't want them, that's too adult from them. No, it's not. No. Because again, total ownership. It's okay to fail. It's okay for your kids to see you fight. Yeah. It's okay. It's how you resolve those issues, you know, and how they see you handle the emotions that you're going through that are going to go, that's how I need to do that. Because if you're, you know, I spill my drink and I just start smashing things around the house, that's a little excessive.
Yeah.
But there are people that are like that.
Yeah.
Wife talks back to you and you snap back at her in front of her. Now you're showing your daughter that that's okay to talk to a woman that way.
Right. And then what do they accept into their lives?
Right.
And then you teach your son that it's okay to talk to a woman that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And then those are big, big things that, you know, you have to control. And unfortunately, I wouldn't say I didn't learn it as a child. It was more because like I did learn all this stuff as a child. My dad was extremely respectful. I never saw my dad literally lose control. Actually, only that time I ever saw my dad lose control was trying to start a lawnmower. The worst customer will get you. He pulls him back. He's like, son of a bitch. He's like, I was just like, well, I'd walk away all scared. I'm like, Dad cussed. You know, all upset and distraught. You know, my dad he's still that way. He's such a straight arrow, and you know, he's such a rock. He's been such a patriarch. You know, and the perseverance my mom and dad had with me being a complete clown in school. Yeah. And that's where I got my perseverance from. And I attribute that to them. And then of course the military really drove that home. You know, never quit, always doing what, you know, we're trained to do, and never quitting. Yeah. So, you know, and I did later on down that road. So second marriage was failing. I was in college, round 2. And basically, you know, I was made a bad financial decision in a marketing business that I was in, lost an ungodly amount of money. And I just went into the bathroom very quietly and grabbed every piece of medication that the VA had prescribed to me and took it. Went out to the East Jetty Pass in Destin. I tell the story all the time, and I tried to kill myself through my medication. And my thought process was like, you know, my life's going to be so much easier, you know, like, or the lack thereof. I'm not going to have to deal with this fight anymore. I'm so sick of fighting. I've been fighting my whole life, whether it be, you know, my education, being homeschooled because, you know, I had dyslexia or whatever, or because I was, you know, whatever I was fighting in the military or whatever all the things may be. Yeah. And right before I went unconscious, I was like, what in the hell am I doing? Like, I'm about to leave my kid. And at that point, the trigger's been pulled. Yeah. It was over. Yeah. And I went unconscious, and it was terrifying. And I don't remember anything. The next thing I remember was being sternum rubbed, waking up with a tri-toned sunburn, because that was like 8, 9 o'clock at night. Phone was next to me with like 1 million missed calls. My wife at the time was calling to figure out what I told her. She didn't believe me initially, but I had the worst hangover in my life, and she finally does now, because, you know, but like, it was one of those things where I went straight back. At the time I was living in Utah. I was just in Florida for a mini vacay in business, and immediately got help. Didn't want to take any more VA medication. That's why I really don't take any meds.
Good.
And that was kind of like, and then I hid that. I kept it to myself for years. And then I was in school to become a medical professional, and they basically piss tested me when I transferred back to Fort Walton Beach, Florida. And, they basically were like, the only thing in this urination cup is this specimen cup is a copious amount of caffeine. And I was like, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. And they're like, yeah, but you're not taking your meds. I was like, oh, I'm totally taking my meds. And they're like, you're full of shit. And I was like, oh man. And at this point, my divorce was already ongoing with my second wife. And basically they said, either you take these meds or you're going to lose your rating, your retirement.
Fuck.
Yeah. And so I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. You know, this is actually what's literally preventing me from going hungry at this point. I was trying to get a place. I was actually technically homeless at that point. And basically they're like, you need a service dog. And that's the only way you're going to do this. So then right then and there, I call
so you could do the service dog, no meds. Is what they're saying. Okay.
That's what they were trying to tell me.
Okay.
And so I basically said, all right, roger that. Went to call the number they gave me. I'll leave the nonprofit, big air quotations, as air quotations. Okay. But they said, we want $36,000 for this elective. Yeah, from a nonprofit. And I said, that doesn't sound right. So I called my buddy immediately, and I was like, hey, dude. And ironically, at that point in time, they were standing up a nonprofit called the Rescue 22 Foundation, who you know, Johnny and everybody else. And I was the first recipient of a dog, and then very shortly thereafter, fell madly in love with dog training. Yeah. Started going to every education under the sun in regards to dog training, from obedience to behavior mods to how to kennel tech to the utmost of my ability, and then literally built a business from that, and just started and was given this opportunity by a gentleman who lives in Naples. His name's Eric Ennis, like saved my life, round two. Like dogs really like brought me home. And I fell in love with it to a point in which I quit college on round 3. And
I think we're done with college.
yeah. So I graduated
twice.
You a little life advice. Right. Graduated college twice, but in my third time at college, I quit finally, and I, didn't want to be a medical professional anymore, and just started focusing in on what meant the most to me. Sorry about that.
All right. Busy man. It's okay.
I literally thought that was on silent.
It's all good.
So we ended up starting the Rescue 22 Foundation. I became a board member on that, and that just became my job full time. But again, started losing all these brothers and sisters, and a few months, it's almost a year now, one of my dearest friends ended up killing himself, who was there for me during my divorce, my second divorce. I met my wife at around the same time now. So we were like, and I was single. We became friends, and her and I were gym rats together. I met her in the gym, and it just kicked off, and her and I she was the most God-sent person. And I started going through this massive healing process, and it was 2 healed people actually being able to be in a relationship, and it was just kismet. It was just insane, like the connection, and we still do to this day. Is like my wife, who is the most amazing, phenomenal mother, stepmother, business partner. We're business partners in all the stuff that we do. If you guys call our business, you're going to talk to her. If you, talk to our nonprofits, you're going to talk to her at some point. So we, but I started getting successful, really successful. And I ended up really starting to secretly suffer. And, everyone looks at me and, they see all of these things that I've accomplished, or they hear me on podcasts and they see all this success. And some people have been following me for a really long time. They saw me when I was homeless. They saw me when I started businesses. They saw my businesses succeed and then some fail, and but they don't see the mental strife. and all these things. I mean, dude, even Jocko's got those moments.
Of course.
And
well, I mean, we just to pause for 1 second. I think the tool of Instagram and social media is amazing. But these 60-second clips, if you watch 60-second clips of Jocko, you're going to think the guy never has a bad moment in his life, that he never slips up, that he never fucks up. But it's like, yo, you got the fucking highlight reel. He deals with shit and demons all the time too. Like,
absolutely.
I just had this yesterday, the same thing. Like, I have a whole structure of how I do things now. Right. Like, you know, I really try and stick to that structure because it seems to help me a lot, like for my mind. But normally I don't have Sloan this many days in a row, but her mother had to leave town, whatever. So basically I had her 9 of the last 10 days, which is amazing and I fucking love it. But she really needed a lot of co-regulation this time, meaning she wanted to touch me a lot. And like, even if we were just like sitting, she just was always like this.
Yep.
Or anywhere. It was like playing with my ears or my beard. Like anything was like constantly touching. And early I would make her stop, but as I became more of a conscious parent, I realized what she was doing. She's balancing her emotional system, right? And all these things. So it just was a lot of emotional drain on me, and I got no work done and all this stuff. And my emotions were spent. I felt like I was at the breaking point. I couldn't control the mental toll that it was taking on me. The house was a mess. Hadn't been to like all these things that like I forget when I'm on cruise control of like shit's firing.
Right.
The mental toll that everything eventually takes, and you feel like you're going to break. And it's, I guess part of what I want to explain is it's okay to break. Like last night I was like, fuck it. I have to stop for a minute. Like this is it. I got nothing left right now.
Right.
You know, and
it's almost an emotional break. It's not like you are mentally breaking, but it's very emotional because you also feel guilty about it.
Very guilty.
The guilt is extreme.
It's very extreme. And that's what I want to bring that up too, because it's going to lead right into that. Because I think that it's the guilt that brings the biggest challenge for me as a father, because if I have to work, I feel guilty that I'm not with her. If I'm with her, I feel guilty that I'm not working. If I can't afford something that she wants, I feel guilty that I can't afford something that she doesn't. Like everywhere you turn, it's like guilt is bitch slapping you across the face.
And I think that's every parent.
Yeah.
I mean, every parent wants to give their kids what they didn't have, or more than what they had. But I don't think that's the right answer.
No, I don't think it is either, but this is what I was going to ask with that. Like, well, let's stick on this for a second. And so then what do you think the right answer is? Like in terms of, or I guess then I feel, I'm going to use my therapist, but then I feel guilty that it's like there wasn't enough playtime or there wasn't enough this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think, you know, time spent with your kids can be substituted, you know, for the things that they want. But, you know, and there's been plenty of times in my life as a father where I can't afford something. Clearly, I've been homeless.
Of course.
Yeah, right? I couldn't even afford to.
Well, I mean, there's limits to wealth. Even if you're a billionaire, you can't just fucking buy every country and move there. I mean, there's just, you know, I mean, there's limits to all that.
Absolutely. And so, you know, I think your kids hearing no is so vital.
Yeah.
Because if a kid's never heard no, then how are they going to be able to handle no in the real world?
So this is interesting. Let's go down this together, because this is going to be like a thought experiment.
Okay.
So these are the things that I think about as a father. This is the stuff that stresses, that brings me mental turmoil.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100% with what you just said. But then there's the statistics that show that like 80 or 85% of children when they're like 2 or 3 years old test as a genius.
Yep.
And then by the time they're 16, they only like 10% test as genius. And the link that they've made is the amount of times they've heard no their entire life between those things. We literally are beating it out of our children by overusing it. So I go through these turmoils where it's like, when is the right time to make sure it's a no and then it's a yes, and then it like, especially my first time being a dad, you know, you're like, what is it too much? Isn't it enough? What was her emotional response? What wasn't it? Did I just beat something out of her I didn't want to beat out of her? Like, this is the stuff I think about all day that mentally drives me fucking nuts, because I'm like, okay, just don't fuck up. Even though you know you're going to, but this is the stuff. So it's interesting, right?
Yeah. With my 3-year-old, I did a little bit of a different, because the mothers of my kids are all three very different individuals. And my wife, Elena, is very much so. We're very similar.
Okay.
We're very, very similar. And we're very, I don't like to call her masculine because it makes people think she's, but she is a very tough woman.
You wanted to be the bottom.
Yeah, dude, there are times like, let me tell you, she does run the finances in this home, but she, like, when Sophia would skin her knee or something would happen, we ignored it,
Same.
and she would, so if she went up, she'd look for a response. Hey, get up. She'd be running around with bloody ass knees.
Same. Sloane's the same way.
And we created a monster.
Same.
So she's like very independent. No, I'll do it. I'll put my own panties on. Yeah. I don't want a diaper, Dad. I want panties. No, you're going to bed. We need to wear a diaper, or she's like, I want to go in the kitchen and get what I want for dinner. I want to get what I want. No, you can't eat ice cream.
Yep.
And so there's these moments where, she gets no. And then once she has this temper tantrum, it happened the other day where quite literally she was having this complete mental breakdown in our laundry room because I told her no.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let her go.
Yep.
Let her check her emotions. Now there gets to a point where you're like, let's talk this out.
Yeah.
And you have to figure that out.
Yeah. Well, something that, it's one of the things that I've just started really diving into and learning about. It's this awesome book about kids called The Yes Brain. And it talks about how children don't even get a logical thinking brain till they're 7-8 years old.
Right.
And we try and force logic on them too early, which I did with Sloane, which I think forced her to mature a little bit earlier, but that's fine. She's amazing. Right. But, it's interesting because I created a monster also. Like this weekend, we were over a friend's house. They moved the chair, slit her toe open. She's bleeding. She just walks into like the kitchen, just bleeding fucking toe. It's just like, Dad, I think I need a Band-Aid. Everybody in the house is like freaking out. She's like, it's a fucking cut. Like, she's like, good. I'm like, boom. Okay. And then I could tell it. Yeah, I could tell it hurt her. Right. So then I was like, baby girl, I know it's okay that it hurts. Like, I know it hurts. You're doing an amazing job of controlling it, you know? And then like, I hold her, let her express those emotions. But when you talk about the intensity that we've bred almost in our daughters and is the other day, I can't remember what was fucking going on. I don't remember what happened, but it got to the point where it was like, she was throwing things and flipping out and just going at it. And so I know what happened. I'll be vulnerable and share what happened because now I remember. So we went over to a friend from schools, right? And they have husband and wife live together, great relationship and children.
Right.
And then we left at the end of the night and we got home and I was like, ooh boy. So we're like driving home and she was like, so-and-so is really lucky in 2 ways. And I was like, well, what are those ways? And she was like, well, she has a pool. And I'm like, well, Meemaw has a pool we can go over to, but yeah, I understand. Maybe we'll get a pool someday. She goes, yeah. Right. And her mom and dad live together. And I was like, fuck, that's the one I didn't want you to say.
Yeah. And it hit you right in the gut.
Oh my God. It was like, I was like, okay, don't throw up and let's talk about it. So we talked about it, got her emotions calmed down. But it wasn't. Like, then we got in the house and it was like a fucking tornado and just like freaking out. And I'm like, I understand what's happening. I'm not going to yell at her. So I'm like trying to be in the room. I'm trying to be present. She doesn't want me around. And then when I'm not around, she comes in and just starts throwing stuffed animals at me to get my attention. So then I try and come back around and I'm like, what do you want? She's like, leave me alone. And I'm like, okay. Like, she's going and I'm like, all right, calm. As long as I stay calm, we're good. We're good. We're good. I'm like, Sloane, I'm going to let you do this because you want me in the other room. Went in the other room. She just started grabbing things and just throwing it at me. Like, and I'm just like, in my head, I'm like, I don't know what to do right now. This is not an okay behavior, but I understand what's happening. Like, whatever. So like 30 minutes of this builds up. And then I eventually just get on her level and I yelled at her, like loud and sternly. I shit you not, she looks me dead in the eyes and just yells right back at me. Like, and I'm just like, fuck. Like, and so then in my head I go, okay, I just yelled at her, showing her that it's an okay way to behave in this situation.
Right.
And she did it back to me. So now what do I do? Because I showed her the behavior that was acceptable.
Right.
And she gave it back.
Oh my God, it's so hard.
And I'm like, fuck. So then I'm like, okay, So I walk out into the other room because we're in like a 1-bedroom. So I'm like pacing back and forth in the rooms, and then she wants alone time, but then she doesn't actually want. I mean, it's this huge tornado. That's a good song. And
I'm so sorry.
It's all right. Mine's Harry Potter, so it's good. You're good.
I'm turning it off. I totally apologize.
It's all right. So it's this crazy back and forth, and then I'm like, okay. I yelled, I lost my cool, get back to my center. So I finally just sit down on the floor. She sits on the other side and is throwing things at me. And I go, baby girl, it's really comfortable over here. Why don't you come sit with me over here? Right. And I tried this like a million times. Right. And I just tried it. She came, sat, and we cuddled for like 30 minutes on the floor. And it was like, we finally got there. But I've realized that we get angry at our children, and then we act a certain way, and then we get pissed when they act that way back. Right. And then we try and correct that behavior. So it's like they're learning by example, and it's like, fuck. And that again, this is the shit that fucks you up in the head as a dad.
And it's funny because my ex-wife just made a post about kids and their emotions and allowing them to express their emotions and not telling them to not cry and not to show them. But I think there's a healthy way to allow kids to do that, because the post she made, and I made a comment and I wrote to her, I said, I think this is very important. And I agreed that this is what they're saying is true, but there's a lot of contextual information missing, because you allow people and you baby children, and it's a double-edged sword. Yeah. So there's a balance to all of it. So yes, allow them to express their emotions healthy. Like you did when she got her cut her toe. I understand that this hurts. It's okay to show that emotion, and letting them know it's okay. And then allowing them to express, especially in a very tough situation where they're trying to discover something. Yep. But then there comes a point where enough is enough. Right. And we have to lay the law that, hey, this is unacceptable behavior, but if we mess up, which we all have done, just as yourself has, okay, I messed up, I yelled, you're yelling, this is not okay for either one of us to do, and this is not how we need to behave. But let's talk about this civilly, and however you need to describe it at their cognitive level.
Yeah. I mean, that's what we've moved into a lot recently, where it's like, hey, let's just talk to each other, baby. Very calmly. I'm here to listen to you. Whatever you need to tell me. We'll talk about it, and it's really cool because it's cool to watch what you've done kind of come to fruition too, because I've always told her, baby, just never lie to me. Always tell me the truth. And so we've been places, and like her little friends will be like, oh, whatever. And then they'll come up and Sloan will tell me whatever they're doing. And their friend will be like, I told you not, don't tell your dad that. Sloan's like, I don't lie to my dad. And I'm like, go ahead, baby girl, you're good. Like, go do whatever you were going to do. Like, but it's the reinforcement of when they do tell you the truth. Like the other day I came in the house, I was taking the trash out, and I told her she could have like one of her packs of these, like, I can't remember what they're called. They're like the organic Skittles, because the organic ones are so much better for you. Right. So she's eating her organic Skittles, and she came in and she was like, And I was like, what, baby girl? She goes, well, this is my second pack of these. I'm like, oh, I appreciate that you told me the truth. Thank you very much for doing that, and just kind of let it go. And it wasn't like whatever. And then later, and then later in the day, like she wanted something else. I was like, all right, well, we can have one of them since we had a couple of the other packs earlier. She's like, okay, but it's like,
again, consequences to a natural decision that you made. It doesn't necessarily need to be like, oh, you're getting grounded. Yeah. It's more like, hey, you did that, so you're not getting this now.
But I'm not punishing her for
being honest.
You can't do that, because then they will lie to you every fucking turn because they're smart.
Oh yeah. And there is a very fine line with that, because, I've had that issue with my kids with my first wife, because that was an issue with their mom, which was lying, not telling the truth, embellishing things that are not necessarily true. And then, my son, he's really, really, really doesn't want to disappoint anybody. He's very a people pleaser. And I think a lot of that is because of the divorce.
Sure.
He wants to, because he's scared of losing that. Yeah. Every time we have to switch off, there's always process that he goes through where he's a little defiant, a little disobedient. There's the party phase, I call it, where he's just super excited to be there. And then we get into the routine, and then the disobedience and the manipulation tries to come. And I know what the truth is. Oh, my mom and stepdad don't let me do that, or let me do that. It's like, hey, dude, no, they don't. And so I started calling his bluff on it. I was like, it was literally what happened. He's like, well, my mom and my stepdad will let me quit. It's like, cool, let's call him right now. And dude, his stepfather, I love this dude. I'm not kidding you. I'm going to make them listen to this because this really happened. And he's like, so we're at jujitsu, and the coach is sitting there like, hey, we want to get a group photo. And I don't think I've ever gotten mad at any of my kids this much, or this intensely. And as we're sitting there, he's like, he does this thing, and all these kids in the neighborhood like roll their eyes every time someone pulls a camera out, and it's the most dumbest looking thing I've ever seen. Okay. And I'm like, it's like, who, you guys think that's funny? And so they're trying to take this picture, and they're like, serious faces, everybody, just look at it one time, please. Yeah. And here's my son looking all retarded. And I'm like, dude, you got to stop. And he's like, and I was like, finally, so there's like 30 of all these people standing there. I like in the middle of the whole group after like the third time of them doing it. I looked over, like, do it again, and it's game on. And he was like, ooh, I'm so embarrassed. And he gets in the car. He's like, I wasn't doing it. So I get the photo. They send it to me. And they have the good one, and I also got the bad one. He was like, I wasn't doing that. So I zoom in. It's clearly my son. He's in there with his face all jacked up, and it's not me. How he knows what Photoshop is, I do not know. It's Photoshopped. I was like literally in the car, pulled over in the gas station, and I'm like showing him, and I'm like, literally, we're in there like I'm having an argument with a 7-year-old right now. So we get back to the house. He's like, my mom and dad don't have a problem with it, blah, 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 blah. My stepdad. I'm like, so I called them up immediately. So I'm like, sit down, we're going to have a conversation. I had it right in front of them, and they're like, he's like, son, he's like, Christian, I've had this conversation with you. You're going to do all these cool things with your dad, going up in gliders and flying in airplanes, and your dad's taking you to do this, and you're going to have all these memories being destroyed by looking stupid. And I've told you to do, and I'm sitting there looking at him, and he's like, and I'm calling his bluff on it, and it actually stopped, thank God, and he started like paying attention, but he was doing it, and I genuinely believe he was doing it so much that he didn't realize it was becoming a habit.
Well, that's 100%.
It's an insecurity thing that he was doing. Like, these are new people, so let me try to be the clown.
Yeah. I mean, it's good you recognize all that part,
right? But my thing was like, don't lie. Just own it.
Yes.
But what I realized after all of it was done and me getting upset, I was like, oh my God, this has become such a habit for him. He has no realization that he's actually doing it.
See, now this is what separates the good parents from the good conscious parents from the ones that aren't, because you understand all of the stuff that was happening in the background, right? That's huge.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people are just like, well, you lied to me and you did the face, and now you're fucking grounded forever.
No. So what happened was, it was like, I see you do it again, you lose your iPad, which he only gets an hour of that on a day, maybe, or you lose your bow, because he's big into bow hunting and archery. He's not hunting yet, but he's got the archery targets and stuff, and he wants to. Or you don't get to go flying with Dad. He was over to some break, so he didn't have school. And I was like, and he did. I think he busted once, and I was like, all right, you've lost your iPad, so instead of your iPad today, you're going to read extra chapters in your book.
Yep.
And then I realized, I was like, man, this kid's not like me. He likes reading. I need to figure out something else. Like, this dude likes to read. I was like, all right. I was like, all right, Mom, this is on you. This is definitely, it's not for me. Good on you for training him up to like read.
Yeah.
I got all emotional because he read to me over the phone, and he's 7. And I was like, I could barely read when I was 7.
I couldn't read. I remember. Go ahead.
And I was like, getting so emotional. I was like, she's like, my ex-wife's like, are you crying? No. Is he smart? Like Forrest Gump, you know. I was like, just is he smart? Is he like his mother?
You're not selling homeschool.
Well, a lot of it had to do with that. That's a whole nother story. But yeah, I was actually homeschooled because I was dyslexic.
Yeah.
And my parents didn't want me to have a special ed diploma because I wanted to join the military.
That's good though, because also what the stuff they would have fucking beat into your head that you believed about yourself.
Oh yeah.
You know, that your parents were like, no, fuck that. You know?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was every day. Like my mom at one point was like making me wake up, look in the mirror and say, I am smart to myself.
Yes. God, fuck
and
yes.
like, and I didn't really believe it until I was older. Actually, it wasn't until I was I was active duty in the military and I realized, oh shit, I can do this. I am able to do this. I went to Special Forces Combat Dive School. And this dude walks up next to me. I'm in my UDTs, my nut huggers on, tan t-shirt, getting ready. We had to hold our pencils up right next to our heads. And we're getting ready to go take a dive physics test. And, you know, anything physical is a non-issue for me.
Same.
And I was like, we're getting ready to go take this written test that involved mathematics and physics. And I'm like,
yeah, same.
And I'm beating sweat. I'm drenched. The guy's name was Sergeant First Class Springfield. He's like, you can jump out of airplanes at pitch black darkness with 200 pounds of equipment on, go to combat, and yeah, you get a pencil handed to you and a few freaking numbers, and you about lose your shit. And I was like, yeah, that seems about accurate. Yeah,
seems about accurate. You know, it's funny. I don't even know if I could probably tell the story, but I'm going to because he's dead and I can. So when I was in chiropractic school, we had this teacher, Dr. Duke. Okay, it was called Duke U. You had him for a year straight, and it was like all the neurology, one after another. Right? It was fucking awesome. He wrote like neuro books. Like he's amazing. And I suck at written test, hands on, whatever. Like game fucking on, baby.
Let's go.
Yeah, easy. And so we had the first exam, and I didn't pass. And so I'm like, fuck, you know, so then I like go to his office, finals, you know, over, and I'm like, hey, you know, and he sits me down and he goes, let me ask you something. I can't remember what he fucking asked me. Asked me a question. I'm like, well, you know, he's like, what does that do? And I'm like, well, it upregulates this, does this, makes this happen. He goes, okay. He asked me like 3 or 4 more questions. And he's like this tall. Like he's this little fucking short Italian guy. Like, I mean, he like, you know, and he's like, yeah. And so then he pulls the test out and he goes, why'd you answer them all wrong? And I was like, I don't know, man. I get all fucked up with the multiple choice. You know, I'm like, I don't know. And he like scratches it off, changes my grade. He goes, I'll see you next semester. You passed. I'm like, okay. So next semester rolls around, does the same thing. He goes, can we get to the point where you stop answering them wrong on the test?
That's so funny.
So it was a year of that. And we got to the last one and I walk in and he goes, don't worry, you already passed. I know you know the answers. Maybe you'll figure this out before you graduate.
That's a good teacher. Yeah. I bet he was a great parent too. But you know, it's funny you say that because it's that same NCOIC, Sergeant Springfield. I failed that test that I walked in on, and he looked at me and he goes, "How do you think you did on the test?" And I was like, "Honestly, Sergeant, I have no clue." He goes, "You got every effing answer wrong." I went, what? I was like, I didn't think I did that bad. That's impossible. He goes, no, let me show you because you're clearly a strong ranger, not a smart one. And he took the bubble, it had a little bubble sheet on it, and then he shifted it. One answer. And I got every single answer wrong, just about. And I was like, oh my God. And he was just like, yep. He said, you would have had every answer right if you would have like matched up your number to your test to your bubble sheet. I was like, son of a bitch. He's like, yep, you're retesting this son of a bitch. Wow. He's like, I don't think you'll have any issue on the retest.
Wow.
And so I sat down, made sure, double checked it. I waited for the whole time, went back through. It was my first one, but that was the only test I failed. But
yeah, no, that's funny. I mean, I remember I didn't have dyslexia. I just I don't know. Whatever it is, the multiple choice tests couldn't pass them. So then boards are multiple choice. So I used to study with the valedictorian of our class, and Chris and I would be studying. And I fucking know everything. And we went in and it's like 90 questions per exam, whatever. And we came out of the first one. He's like, just remember to count how many you fucking know. We'll be able to figure out like, cause the bottom 10% fail no matter what. And then they base the grade off of that. Right. He's like, then we'll be able to figure out if we passed. I'm like, okay, like 90. And I think I came out and he's like, all right, how many did you know? He's like, I counted 58 that I knew for sure. I'm like, 58? I'm like, I knew 14. Like, I'm never going to fucking pass.
Oh my God.
I was like, fuck. But I passed.
That's it. But, it's cool because stuff like this is so important for our kids to hear and see, because, it brings normalcy into their lives, and they see these types of things. And it's like, okay, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only dad that's going through these issues. I'm not the only dad that's gone through financial tribulations and homelessness and custody battles, which we'll get into maybe on part two. But, going through and being accused and allegations of horrible, heinous things that I never did, and going through the humiliation of that, and then the healing of being able to come to terms with the things, and actually talking about, like, don't hide from your past, because all it's going to do is hinder your future. Hiding from your past is truly going to just hinder you from your future, and you need to embrace it. You have to just take full on what has happened to you, because you can either let it define you and completely bask in your misery and your sorrows and all these things, or you can use that to fuel your future and move forward in the life that you were meant to live. Yep. The one that, if you're a veteran, your dead brothers and sisters want you to live that.
Right.
You're getting to live the life they weren't able to.
Yeah.
And so you should honor them. No, it's not going to be an easy life. No, you're not going to be able to, say, hey, I lived the perfect life, but you're living, and you have the ability to make a difference in somebody's life that may be choosing to maybe off themselves because of a custody battle, or because of the traumas they went through in their life.
That shit'll break you.
Oh, it will.
It'll break you.
It did.
I think, oh yeah. It broke me, and I've talked about it on other ones. It broke me, and I think that, you don't realize it's back to that same analogy of, you don't end poverty by being poor.
Right.
You don't end it. You don't end. You just can't do it. You have to become extremely wealthy,
right,
to end poverty. You have to lead by example, because then you can teach other people the way to wealth.
And wealth is not necessarily fiscal.
Correct.
Wealth can be knowledge, can be mental peace, can be security in whatever it is going on in your life. Right. There are many people that I have met that their desire is not to have big, I'm one of them. I don't want huge mansions and Ferraris and all these things. That's cool and all, but that's not what I want.
Right.
I want land. I want to buy, was it Luke Bryant? I want to buy dirt.
Yeah.
That's my mantra. Like, buy dirt, buy memories.
Yep.
I want memories with my kids and my family, and all that.
Yeah. No, I think that's the, I want all of it. I want the dirt and the Lambo. I want to drive the Lambo on my dirt. Until it gets
I dig it. I like your style.
All right. So that's the end of part 1 for today. We're going to cut it there. We are going to do a part 2. We're going to get into some more of, we're going to definitely talk ayahuasca. Let's talk custody. Yeah. Let's talk how that helped heal you. I do want to talk the custody battles, because I think that I didn't have to deal with that. So for me, I think it's very important. A lot of people are going to resonate with that, because I know that what it would feel like to feel like someone was trying to take my child away. It would make me feel so much rage inside that I think I would forego everything I know about being nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think it'll be awesome. But
let's go.
Thank you so much for this, brother. This was awesome.
Thank you, brother.
Part 2 is going to be amazing.
Absolutely.
All right.